Did you know that the All Persons Are Fictitious disclaimer that you often see at the beginning of movies and TV shows was actually brought to us thanks to the infamous killer of Russia's most notorious villain of the 20th century, Grigory Rasputin. His name was Felix Yusupov, and he almost accidentally sort of transformed the whole movie industry in Hollywood and all over the world. In this video, you will learn how it could have possibly happened.
Prince Felix Yusupov, vous avez tué Rasputin. Oui.
A peasant Grigory Yefimovich Rasputin was a Russian mystic and self-proclaimed holy man who gained immense influence in the court of Tsar Nicholas II and his wife, Tsarina Alexandra, in the early 20th century. He was known for his strange powers of healing and persuasion, and many people believed that he had a special connection to the divine. Frankly speaking, he was a controversial figure indeed. Romanov's advisor and Tsarina Alexandra's most trusted confidant, Rasputin was often blamed for his alleged intervention into the course of Russian politics.
Why, you pampered fool, inside of a year, in less than a year, I will be Russia. You hear that?
No wonder he had many opponents, if not to say enemies, among the powerful aristocrats who were close to the imperial family. Prince Felix Yusupov, Count Sumarokov-Alston, was one of them. This handsome man with impeccable manners and truly aristocratic presence was born into one of the wealthiest and most powerful families of the Russian Empire. Their roots go back for centuries, and even now, over 100 years after the revolution, their fabulous palaces could be seen in St. Petersburg, Moscow, and in other places around the country, and the pearls of their personal collection of art and treasures shine in the museums in Russia and abroad. Technically, young Felix wasn't a Yusupov by birth. By that time, the male line of descendants of this noble family was extinct, and the family wealth was passed on to his mother, Zinaida Nikolaevna Yusupova. She was a woman of exceptional beauty and elegance, who obviously had no problem finding the suitor of the appropriate social status. Although she had prospects of marrying the crown prince of the foreign royal family, she preferred to follow her true love interest and became the wife of Count Felix Felixovich Sumarokov-Alston. With respect to the family's status and magnitude, Tsar Alexander III granted them special permission to carry the title Prince Yusupov and Count Sumarokov-Alston, and to pass it on to his and Zinaida's heir. That was a truly honorable exception, so you could understand the place the family held in the contemporary social hierarchy. Felix was an extremely attractive young man who led a rather flamboyant, even extravagant life from his early years. Yusupov studied at the University College of Oxford, and his contemporaries remembered that while living there he had a Russian cook, a French driver, an English valet, and a housekeeper. Many spoke of his alleged bisexuality. He adored cross-dressing and going to the balls in his mother's gowns and jewelry, smoked hashish, danced the tango, and gave crazy parties together with his no less free-minded friends from all over Europe. It may look like Felix was nothing more than an outrageously rich party beast, right? Yet those who knew him personally stated that his personality was much more deep and versatile, which he proved in later course of his life.
Prince, appartenez-vous à la famille impériale russe?
Non, mais ma femme est la nièce de l'empereur Nicolas II.
At the age of 26, he marries Princess Irina Alexandrovna of Russia, the only niece to the country's last emperor, Nicholas II. 7 years younger than Yusupov, and just like her husband-to-be, Irina was a remarkably beautiful and elegant member of European society. I intentionally say European, so you could better get the context of the epoch. Back at the time, and we now speak about the turn of the 20th century, Russia was much more integrated into the continent's social and political life than it is now. In particular, the members of the aristocracy and the entire imperial family had close ties with other European monarchs and upper classes, spoke foreign languages better than Russian, and spent years living abroad in, say, London, Paris, or south of France. Maybe that was one of the reasons why it all ended up with a revolution, yet that's a whole nother story. Anyway, despite the morganatic nature of their relationship and Felix's wild past, the young lovers managed to persuade Irina's family and proceed with what's going to be later known as the Society Wedding of the Year, and the last such occasion in Russia before the First World War. Irina was wearing a veil that once belonged to Marie Antoinette, and her uncle Tsar Nicholas II gave her a wedding present of a bag of 29 uncut diamonds, ranging from 3 to 7 carats. Back to Felix. Despite his notoriously frivolous lifestyle in his younger years, he was a somewhat fervently religious and compassionate person. His friends said that he also had a horror of the bloodshed and violence of war. And heir to an immense fortune, he spent tons of money on charity and converted a wing of one of their St. Petersburg's mansions into a hospital for wounded soldiers.
Aviez-vous un intérêt personnel au meurtre de Rasputin?
Aucun.
The First World War has become a catalyst for the dissolution of the old world, and the Russian Empire in particular. The life of ordinary people became way less secure, and the growing poverty rate pushed the neglected working classes to the barricades. Moreover, rumors were spreading that the Tsar doesn't rule the country and put everything into the hands of a mystic Rasputin, whose shady practices and undeniable influence on Irina built a solid ground for making him the ultimate mastermind behind all the troubles and problems of Russia. The upper circles were also divided. Some of them felt the sympathy for the imperial family, who were so reliant on Rasputin since he managed to persuade them he knew how to heal young Alexei, the heir to the throne, who was struggling every day because of his severe illness of hemophilia. Others didn't look at the rapidly aggravating situation through the rose-tinted glasses and felt the urge to get rid of the mystic, who was obviously distracting the Tsar from the current real-life agenda, leading to the worsening political situations that brought rioting, protests and violence.
Prince, au soir de votre vie, lorsque vous repensez à Rasputin, quel sentiment éprouvez-vous à son égard?
Le dégoût.
Felix Yusupov was one of the members of that second faction. Being now part of the imperial family, he couldn't resist the salacious rumors about Irina's relationship with Rasputin and ruining of his own country as he saw it. Together with several other conspirators, he decided that Rasputin was destroying the country and must be killed. They've been planning the assassination over the course of several months in 1916. Irina described that Felix was in a state of wild enthusiasm, ready to climb a wall. He firmly believed that the murder was the only way of saving the situation that was almost hopeless. Irina initially planned to play the part in the murder, yet backed out of it in the end, although she still continued supporting her beloved husband.
Princesse, étiez-vous au courant du projet de votre mari?
Oui, j'étais au courant.
L'aviez-vous approuvé?
Oui.
Long story short, they killed Rasputin at the end of the day, yet it didn't save Russia, obviously, and the country was broken apart by the revolution and the rounds of civil war. I covered it in more detail in my videos about Anastasia movie, so you may find it on my channel in the dedicated playlist. Just like many thousands of their compatriots, Prince Felix Yusupov and his wife Irina, the Romanov princess, had to flee the country. Just like I am now, they were beginning their new life on board of a ship that took them out of the country of their birth. In their case, it was HMC Marlborough, and the British officers remembered that Felix Felix enjoyed boasting about killing Rasputin while he was on the ship. Amazingly, the killing of Rasputin and the later punishment by Tsar Nicholas, who sent the co-conspirators in exile, saying that nobody has the right to kill on his own private judgment, well, it actually saved Yusupov's life. When Bolsheviks came to the Romanovs, Felix and Irina were in exile in a remote country estate. They then managed to briefly escape to St. Petersburg, grab some precious jewelry and 2 paintings by Rembrandt, and head to Crimea to board a ship of salvation that took them to Malta. Everything says that they were a remarkable pair for a reason. In their new life, without the vast connections and all the money and the former grandeur, they still managed to, if not get back to the level they had, then definitely not lose themselves and find the proper place in the society limelight. Remember that bag of diamonds that Nicholas gave Irina as a wedding present? Well, together with those Rembrandts, they helped them sustain their rather not bad living in their now lifelong exile in Paris. They bought a beautiful house near Bois de Boulogne, established a couture house Irfé, which became widely popular in Paris in the 1920s, supported many other less privileged members of the Russian émigré community, and overall kept leading a life of wealthy aristocrats no different from their former English pals.
Prince, dans des circonstances identiques, si vous aviez à prendre une décision identique, referiez-vous ce que vous avez fait?
Oui.
And now we're getting to Hollywood. Back at the time, the whole story of the end of the era, with the whole country, the Russian Empire, gone with the wind, with all those princes, dukes and counts becoming taxi drivers, and their princesses becoming catwalk models, became a romantic concept in Western culture. Hollywood was tapping into its golden age, and such unbelievable fairy tale-like subjects were an obvious pick for screenwriters and film directors. In 1932, the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Corporation released its drama Rasputin and the Empress. Well, without watching the movie, you may now say that you know the subject. Just take the story about the Tsarina, Rasputin, Felix and Irina that I just told you, and here you go. Obviously, in the movie the names were changed, like Prince Yusupov became Prince Chegodiev, and Princess Irina became Princess Natasha.
But I don't like him, and I never shall.
You never tried to.
Oh, it isn't that. There's something clammy about him. I can't explain it. I've had the same feeling, brushing against something on a dark night. I don't know what he's after, but I get a sort of feeling of a man waiting his chance.
Yet in the film they included a rumor which had no relation to reality, which would eventually cost the studio much more than the initial loss of $185,000 which it brought to the box office. That Princess Natasha was portrayed as a victim, and as if Rasputin even raped her.
Paul, I believe in him, in his sincerity, his divine power. No one can shake my faith in him, not even you.
You know, such insinuations surrounded the Tsarina and a rather large circle of aristocratic women in Russia of the epoch. Various recollections of the mystic sessions, private and collective, leave some doubts whether there was any contact of this kind between him and the ladies. Yet there is no smoke without fire, they say.
You can't kill me. You can't kill me. If I die, Russia dies. You hear that?
Anyways, Princess Irina Romanov-Yusupov has never met Rasputin in person. That we can say rather firmly. And such portrayal in the Hollywood movie could have been easily defeated in the court as defamation. Felix hired an attorney, Fanny Holtzman, who was a pioneering female lawyer in the motion picture and theater industry. And in 1933, they filed a lawsuit against MGM claiming invasion of privacy and libel. As a result, they won an award of $127,000 in an English court and in New York an out-of-court settlement with MGM from $250K to $1 million. Here the number varies from source to source. Doesn't sound much? Well, don't forget about the inflation and the currency value at the time. This way, the combined $377,000 in 1933 was over $8.5 million today. And if we believe in $1 million settlement from MGM, it brings the total compensation to over $25 million. As to the film itself, they had to cut the offending scene, which renders Princess Natasha's character somewhat incomprehensible unless the audience is aware of the edit. In the first half of the film, she is a supporter of Rasputin, and in the second half, she is terrified of him for no given reason. And finally, to the famous disclaimer. The film began with a claim that this concerns the destruction of an empire. A few of the characters are still alive, others met death by violence. Reportedly, a judge in the case told MGM that not only was this claim damaging to their case, but that their case would be stronger if they had incorporated a directly opposite statement, that the film was not intended as accurate portrayal of real people or events. Sounds obvious, right? Yet back then, that was a real eureka moment, and many studios began to incorporate the All Persons Fictitious disclaimer in their films to protect themselves from similar court action.
Toute votre vie, vous avez refusé que l'on réalise des films sur votre histoire. Les films que l'on a faits sur Rasputin l'ont été sans votre aveu. Et pourtant, pour la première fois, vous autorisez notre film. Et pour la première fois, vous paraissez devant les caméras. Prince Yusupov, pourquoi?
Parce que les autres films ne racontaient pas la vraie histoire.
Felix also wrote his memoirs and continued to be both celebrated and infamous as the man who murdered Rasputin. Despite having no financial problems, they say that for the rest of his life he was haunted by the killing and suffered from nightmares. He also somehow took the powers of Rasputin and had a reputation as a faith healer. Together with Irina, they enjoyed a happy and successful marriage for more than 50 years. When Felix died in 1967, Irina was stricken by grief and died 3 years later. What a story behind a disclaimer which is known to everyone in the world. I hope it was interesting for you. See you in my other videos. And yeah,